Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Anderson. I'm the chair of the Planning Matters Subcommittee, and we're doing our first ever Zoom meeting. And what we've been dealing with, for those who are joining us for the first time, is a matter that was referred to us by our East Long Meadow Planning Board regarding a mixed-use district. And we've been working for quite some time having meetings. Many of you perhaps have seen us on the East Long Meadow LCAT channel. But if not, we've been talking about we've morphed the request into a mixed-use village. And what mixed use means, business, it means residential, and it goes on in much more detail. What we're focusing on today are some other matters as we're wrapping up to send this back to the planning board for a public hearing, and then ultimately back to the East Council for a public hearing and a vote. So I'm going to open up the meeting. Today is the 23rd. It is about 3:02 in the afternoon, and welcome. Our first item is to review and approve the minutes from our March 10th, 2020 meeting. Any comments or edits? Marilyn.
I just have a few comments. First of all, thanks, Connor, for doing the work. It's nicely done.
Anytime.
A couple things quickly for others present. After Tide Richards' name, it should probably say planning board. Everyone else has a title of sorts, but Tide was just Tide.
Sure.
And I don't want them to think he's my brother. So anyway, Tide Richards planning board under. Then on now it's my second page. It's the paragraph that starts with Ms. Richards asked about facilitating preferences. I'm not sure how are you looking this up on a hard copy, Connor?
Yeah, I've got both.
Okay,
Sure.
All right. Well, do you have the paragraph that says Ms. Richards asked about facilitating preferences?
Yep, I see that.
Okay. Prior to the word guidelines, I thought it should say met the Fair Housing Act guidelines. Okay. And the only other piece that I wanted to ask or to add, it's on the, oh gee, how do I tell you this? It's on the next page. At the top of the page, it starts with Mr. O'Shea commented that having the preference language.
Yep.
Okay. You did a great job in giving your opinion, but you left mine and Dawn's out. So what I would just like to add is after the word listed, I'd like to add both Ms. Richards and Mr. Anderson responded that East Long Meadow residents should always be included within the preference language.
Sure.
That would be it. That's all I have to offer. Thank you, Connor.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other edits or changes? None? All right. Then I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion is made. Is it seconded?
Second.
Motion is made and second. I will call for a vote, and because it's a Zoom meeting, we have to do the roll call. So Marilyn.
Yes.
Connor.
Yes.
Ralph.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Just to let people know, we do have a quorum. Our committee is made up of 5 members, and we have 4 out of 5 here. Forgot to mention that little detail. All right. And we will be working on approving and getting our other minutes, and we've made some progress in that area. So we haven't, and I know it was brought up as a point to discuss. The next one is some matters as a follow-up. I was asked the last time to talk to our town attorney specifically for planning zoning matters, and that attorney and I spoke, and Attorney Pill is his name. And we came back with some ideas on some bullet points that I wanted to bring to the attention of the council, of the subcommittee. And we'll try to hit them in a and then open up and then wrap up at the end with more open discussion. The first one is discuss the capping of the maximum number of affordable units to 20%. Again, for those who are joining us, municipalities in this Commonwealth have a requirement of having a certain percentage of housing affordable. Doesn't mean low income, it means affordable, and that affordability is a function of the median income within that community. So part of this particular bylaw is so that because the impetus for this, and again, we're not, those who watch this know, this is not the first time I mentioned this, we are not voting on a particular proposal, okay? The site that is the impetus is the former package machinery facility. And a developer wants to turn that into a mixed use village, if you will. So what we want to be concerned about is that we don't put our town in a situation similar to we were in the 1980s, where we didn't have enough affordable housing and a developer was able to go to the state and force a comprehensive permit on us. So to be proactive, we are requiring 10% affordable housing on a phased basis. However, that doesn't have a top end on it. In theory, if the developer moves, he could turn it into 20, 30, 40, whatever percent. So discussing with the attorney, he suggested putting a cap of up to 20%. And I will open it up for discussion. Ralph,
I am on page 8, it's 5.3B13.
Mm-hmm.
The way I read it, we've capped it at 10%. It says, shall provide additional housing to include affordable housing at a rate of 10% affordable units. It doesn't say up to 10%. It doesn't say, it says that they have to do 10% of them affordable. So to me, that's the minimum and the maximum is what we were trying to do.
That's where I was having discussion with Attorney Pill, is reading some of the case law and so forth, is the standard is many are considered 20%. I'm not advocating 20%. I'm quite happy with 10%. Some other communities have 13%. 10% would keep us no worse than we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't suggest after his reading that somebody may not say, well, if you're fine with 10, we've complied with 10%, but what's going to prevent us from going to a higher number? And in the interest of mixed use, mixed families in terms of income and diversity and so forth, the suggestion was to allow 10% as what we're requiring, but not to exceed 20. And again, this is only for discussion, guys. This isn't something we're trying to, yes, Marilyn.
Sid called me from Kentucky, and he was very concerned about even the mention percentage. He felt that 10% was the maximum, and I understand what you're trying to explain was, commented to you by Attorney Pill. I was wondering perhaps if the language read a ratio of a required maximum of 10%. Required says it's 10%. The maximum says it doesn't go anything more than that. I'm not interested in inviting a large number of affordable units on more than one project. I believe we're trying to do our fair share with respect to our regional requirement, and I applaud the fact that we are addressing it as we are, but we're not looking to inundate our schools or our public service expenses, etc., with respect to an overwhelming affordable housing development. 20%, I believe, is the minimum requirement for a 40B.
So I'm fine with that. I think that's something we can go back to Attorney Pill, but with that revision as maybe, because we were not finding any type of cap on it. And this was the language he was suggesting based on compliance with, 40B, which we're not putting ourselves in that position, by doing what we're doing. At least we're not anticipating that. So would you be, talking to the rest of the committee, of adding the word maximum, and then I can go back to Attorney Pill and see if that protects the town?
Just one question, Don.
Yes, Connor.
Did he suggest like if we're even allowed to put a maximum?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, he said that because what we're trying to do is in this mixed village is to have a mix of people of different incomes and so forth, affordable, upper end and so forth. Because for the new people out there, the petitioner was talking about units going for about $2,500 a month for rent, or condos, a certain percentage, condos being sold, and then after they're sold, whatever that number is, they would convert it, and they would have the rest for apartments. So they refer to it as concierge living. So, I'm fine proposing back to the council, to council SEL, that we're okay with a maximum of 10% and see if I get any pushback from him. And
May I add,
go ahead.
if we say a maximum, a ratio of a maximum of 10%, does that imply less than 10?
I think
Not
that's
to
what we
exceed
said.
10%? I think we want 10%, right? In order not to put us in a situation where we're going to be subject to a comprehensive permit. So I would say 10% and but also add the word not to exceed, or put maximum. Minimum 10% and not to exceed 10%.
What about, if I may, at a ratio, at a required ratio of a maximum of 10%? But see, that doesn't say that you have to do 10% either.
Yeah, you could do 5.
At a ratio of 10%. It says, the language reads, mixed-use village district projects anticipating that 100 residential units or greater are to be developed shall provide additional housing to include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units according to the following schedule. That sounds to me like the requirement is 10%.
And yeah, 10% is the requirement. It just doesn't seem to preclude going above 10%, was the conversation we had. They'll say, yeah, we hit the requirement and now we're exceeding the requirement. Does it say you can't go above 10%?
Can you put in parentheses nothing greater?
That's kind of that's what this is all about, trying to come up with something to come back.
Or in parentheses, nothing less or greater than 10%.
Yeah, or is it like to include affordable housing at a ratio not to exceed 10%? But then I guess, how do we make sure that minimum still
the issue, right?
Exactly. And that's why he was reading the 20%, as you mentioned, Marilyn, earlier, and thought that would be a cap. And of course, I knew that that's something we definitely have to discuss and to see if we can come up with something else or not. And if we can try to tighten it up and say not to exceed 10%, has to be a minimum of 10% and not to exceed 10%.
Yeah, it might be verbose, but I guess that would be explicit. It's saying like at a minimum of 10% and a maximum of 10%.
Yeah, I can talk to him about it. I did kind of, I did touch the subject, and he immediately went to 40B and told me about the 20% as the number and suggested that, but here we are to talk about it.
Don, how about
That's
a
Ralph.
ratio of exactly 10% affordable units? And that way there, you can't go over, you can't go under. It has to be exactly 10%.
Well, we do have a phased approach to it, where there's certain percentages over time. So I wonder if that's going to be too limiting, that there might be situations where that 10% is not going to be there. So it's, you know what I'm saying?
It's only not there in the first 24 units.
Right.
Because and that was the way the scale was written. Beyond that, it's not an issue. And there's no affordable in the first 24 units.
No, but they're not going to, nobody will ever build a project with just 24 units.
Well,
Plus,
exactly.
if the state questioned us and so forth, we already have the formula that's in that, you know, it's not, we're not showing any, any opposition to having affordable units. I'll go back to Attorney Pill and I'll mention a certain amount that we want 10%, but we really want to make sure that the maximum is also 10%. And we'll see if we can kind of come up with some language that I can report back to you to keep it at that way. Like I said, I tried just to touch the subject, and he immediately thought we'd have a better chance of having it effective if we went to 20% based on his reading. But I'll mention that we talked, and that's, you know, and I'll do that. Is that it? Are we in agreement on that?
Yeah, that works for me.
Good question. I'm sorry, Connor, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying that works for me. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Okay. Small subject. Is someone taking minutes for this meeting?
Yeah, I started.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know if you can hear me typing in the background.
No, thank you. I wasn't sure if I needed to start jotting down as far as the document because we really haven't made any changes. Okay, just needed to know what was happening. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Don, through the chair,
Yes, Ralph.
it's good with me going back to Michael Pill, but I do have a question under that same paragraph where it says shall provide additional housing. Why did we add the word additional? Shouldn't we be saying shall provide housing to include affordable housing units at a rate of 10%? It sounds like they can build 100, but if they go to 101, then anything over that's got to be 10% affordable. It agreed on was everything on 10%. They can't do more units and say, well, these affordable units are on top of the 300 that we agreed to.
So
I know it has to do with the mixed use village district projects, which provides a combination of different types of housing, whether it's single family, whether it's apartments, whether it's condominiums, whether it's townhomes. And if the sentence reads mixed use village district projects, then, if you separate the comment, shall provide additional housing. I mean, the mixed use already provides a variety of housing, and I believe that's what that meant. Does that help?
is there a way, I mean, so what you're suggesting, Ralph, is it could be interpreted as we approve, say, 300 units, that they're entitled to 330 units, of which an additional 30. So you want to see if we can tighten up that language as well?
I'm just curious why we added additional housing instead of just shall provide housing to include affordable housing.
That came from...
I thought we...
Again, it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
We've answered it 3 times. My brain's just not working at the moment.
No, you're right. This is the first meeting we've had in the COVID area. So, All right. Okay. All right. So what you're suggesting is if we can find a way to say by in addition to market rate or upper end rate units, 10% affordable, but not to say that in addition to the approved number of units, an additional number of that's 10% above what was approved by the planning board, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's what we had agreed upon, that. You know,
Okay.
if the development was 300
No,
units. it's 300
I
units.
agree. I think at one time the petitioner wanted to have it in addition to, but we want to make sure that it's read very clear by planning board in their process that it's not in addition to what they want, a number on top of it. It's within that number, in addition to concierge living units, a 10% will be affordable.
Right.
All right, so we have to tighten that language up too.
I was just reading it again, and if you take out the stuff that's separated by the commas, you would just wind up with a sentence that's like mixed-use village district projects shall provide additional housing to include affordable housing, and so on. And so to me, I think to Marilyn's point, it kind of just says that the additional housing is because of the mixed-use project as a whole. Of that housing, it has to include affordable housing at that ratio.
That was the way I interpreted it, but Ralph was looking at it from a different spin. And I just want to make sure that other developers aren't as well.
So if we took the additional out.
I read it the same way as Connor has read as well.
Okay. I'm just thinking, I mean, if it said mixed-use village district projects shall provide housing to include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units.
To remove the word additional, I don't think changes the meaning.
Housing, but you were adding also the word at a ratio after the word housing too, right, Ralph? You were going to.
All I was looking to do is take out the word additional.
All right, shall provide housing to include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units. Okay,
according to the plan schedule.
that's kind of a broken sentence.
I
We know
mean,
what the intent is 10% is the number, but we don't want some future board to read it as an additional 10% on top of what was approved. So we know what the intent is, but now's the time as we're doing this to basically make sure there's only one way to read it. Agreed?
yeah, and I'm definitely not an English major, so 20
No,
other people
you're reading it in a way that could be interpreted. Just read court cases. You have a 5-4 decision, and you could have very intelligent judges on one side versus other side, and they're reading a word and reading it, meaning it one way versus the other. So the more we can make this as black and white when we're dealing with a moving target of percentages and units, the better it is going forward.
Yeah, would it work if we did just remove the word additional?
Well, let's read it.
That
100 residential units or greater to be developed shall provide housing to include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units according to the following schedule. We have affordable housing. Shall include. How about getting rid of affordable housing to shall provide affordable housing No, shall include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units.
Yeah, so just to make sure I got it, shall include affordable housing at a ratio of 10%. So you'd basically be getting rid of
Additional
provide
housing
additional
too.
housing to include.
Shall the residential units or greater, 100 residential units or greater are to be developed, shall provide or shall include, get rid of the word provide additional housing to, shall include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units. So it doesn't suggest anything additional. It's just say within the 100, the 10% will be included. So the word provide additional housing to on,
Yeah,
and say shall include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% based on the following schedule.
works for me.
Yeah, that works.
Okay. All right.
Looks good to me and it reads better.
Want me to bounce that off of Mike Pill, or do you want to just take a vote? Right. I'll do it anyway. You know that. But you want to take a vote to make that amendment?
Sure.
All right.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I move that we change 5.3B13A to change it to mixed-use village district projects, anticipating that 100 residential units or greater are to be developed, shall include affordable housing at a ratio of 10% affordable units according to the following schedule.
Motion made
Second,
and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Marilyn,
yes.
Connor,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So it passes 4-0. All right. And again, I will bounce this off to Attorney Pill as well for comments. All right. Next matter for discussion is, and this is something he brought up, discuss limits to residential bedroom sizes to a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. One of the concerns we had was what would happen if this place, for whatever reason, found that the market wasn't for millennials, downsizing, retirees with money, this sort of thing, and they decided to change the model. And he said, well, one way is to put a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, which is self-limiting as far as impact to school systems and so forth in there. What are your thoughts on his comments there? Marilyn.
I'll go. I honestly think that in discussion previously, as far as the apartments were concerned, there was discussion about a number of single bedroom apartments or 2 bedrooms with perhaps 2 master suites for 2 young professionals or a couple, you know, a guest quarters, whatever. I wouldn't have any problem with limiting the number of bedrooms, 1 to 2 bedrooms for the apartments. When it comes to townhomes and condos, you know, I'm in a condo that has 3 bedrooms and a guest and a loft. You know, some people like extra space just for spreading out, you know, living. And condos are in a different category, so I'm not sure I would want to restrict those particular issues, but for apartments, 1 to 2 bedrooms, I think is reasonable.
Okay.
You know, I'm not saying 6 of this or 7 of that. I mean, it's up to the developer to just the ratio. But I know there was discussion at one point of single bedrooms in the apartment. So, and that would meet elderly needs, more affordable perhaps to some folks if it's only 1 bedroom, if it's 1 person, you know, that type of situation. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I mean, myself, I mean, I think when we're talking about projects of this size, that's could potentially have 400 or so units, and that would involve adding, maybe 800 people. And when we look at a voting population of 11,000 and a town population of 16,000, and if not a proper mix in there, we could put ourselves in a position where we could have really dire impacts to our school system. So I don't have a problem with 1 and 2 bedrooms. In most cases, I even think they're townhouses. I believe for the market they're going after, the millennials and the downsizing seniors, I think the 1 and 2 should probably work pretty well as well. I've not heard them talking about having family style similar to what we have at the Elms. Even though there's not many families in the Elms, we understand that. But I don't know. What anyone else's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yes,
I
Connor.
don't know that we necessarily need to limit it, because I think even just by the economics game of it, if they tried to put more 3 or 4 or more bedrooms in there, I mean, the number of units that they'd be able to squeeze into the same size parcel would just be limited, and I don't know that that would even financially work out for them. But I also think it's not just, I mean, we think of the term bedroom that people are going to be sleeping in it, but a lot of people nowadays want, an office space if they're working from home. And so if we said 1 to 2 bedrooms and you have 1 or 2 people sleeping in a bedroom, then how would they have any sort of storage or office or some other use?
We have John Takena wants to speak. I'm fine with him chiming in.
Hi, Don. How are you?
Good, John. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Hi, John.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to chime in if I could. I think that our townhome units are certainly planned to be 3 bedrooms for the townhomes. That would certainly be the case, for a for sale unit. And I would like to not be precluded from having a 3-bedroom sale unit if it were a condominium flat for sale. So I would be, and Marilyn, you heard exactly correct, that any rental product would have a substantial percentage, which would be 1-bedroom units, that would probably approach, 40 or even as high as 50%. That would be 1 bedrooms for the rental properties. So if I were to say it in general, I would say a statement that any units designed for rent would be 1 and 2, limited to 1 and 2 bedrooms, and any units for sale would be, to have 3 bedrooms. And recall that your limiting factor, kind of going to what Connor was saying, is parking. So your parking is driven by bedroom. So if you have 3-bedroom units, you have additional parking requirements, and that's actually going to limit, the overall development of that 3-bedroom type of unit. So you have kind of a built-in physical restriction that's going to limit the 3 bedrooms. But I think we would be comfortable with 1 and 2 bedrooms for rent, but you would be able to have a 3-bedroom in a for sale townhouse or condominium product.
Now, would the condos be integrated within the apartments? In other words, could you have an condo, apartment, condo, apartment, apartment, apartment type situation, or are they going to be in a separate part of the development?
Certainly a separate building. I'm not sure it would go fully to a separate part, but they would definitely be, I don't like to use the word, but it's the appropriate word, separated or segregated by tenure. So you'd have a condo building for sale, all as one building, and a rental building for rent, all as one building. But there's nothing to preclude the fact that they might be next to each other. You know, and again, the only differentiation on the inside would be a for sale product would be predominantly 2-bedroom with potentially some 3-bedroom. You know, and seeing where you're all sitting is actually driving some of that conversation of the additional space, you know, to provide for an additional room or den even that is a home office, you know, some type of home workspace is something that we are certainly planning for as we go forward in the future. So, but again, we would think that would be in a for sale product. That would be, you know, the only ones that would go to 3-bedroom. A rental product would only be 1 or 2.
All right. So we heard what John just said. How do we put that into the bylaw? To say rental units shall be 1 to 2 bedroom and townhouses and condos can be up to 3?
Units for sale versus units for rent, I think is how John differentiated it. I don't know that any condos or townhomes will actually be rented. I'm not certain.
Well, nothing would stop somebody.
Condo by virtue of ownership is sale. Am I correct in looking at it that way? I mean, do you purchase you purchase only condos and you rent only apartments? So why don't we have a motion first and then figure out where to put it in the document?
Just to clarify, there are condos, even in the greater Springfield area, where investors buy the condos and turn them into rentals.
True.
So this might be an opportunity for an investor to say, this is a beautiful project, it's selling very well. Let's buy 10 condos and rent them ourselves, unless there's restrictions. I mean, I know there's FHA, Fannie Mae guidelines that could, you know, run afoul with having one single owner owning that many units and renting them. But aside from that, it's, I think what John was saying is something I think we could probably put in, saying that anything that's a rental apartment would be 1 to 2 bedrooms, and condos would be owner occupied up to 3. Does that work?
I think either, I don't know if I think either of those work. And it could, in the development regulations for the mixed use district, 5.3B12, or you could tack it on to 5.3B11
Additional.
E. Yeah, you have an additional provision and
Right.
have an F, you know, and maybe that is something that's memorialized in the host community agreement.
I agree with your first comment. I think having it maybe in 12 makes more sense. And then, hold on, slightly out of order here. Yeah, I think development regulations, I think it would fit in 12. I like to keep the host community agreement more in terms of impact and so forth. But as far as potential developers, they won't know what's in a host community agreement on the onset, and they would certainly could see it right here.
I think under development regulations for a mixed use village district, that works for me in terms of location.
Yeah, 53812. Yep.
5.3B12, right?
Or B. I'm sorry, bad eyes. B12. We need some B12.
Would we think that would just be like a new bullet point G?
Yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Okay, we can work on some language for that.
So Don, are we looking at will
You're coming in
Two
really
bedroom.
fuzzy, Ralph.
And
Start
just
over.
as apartments. No, it's my, yeah. Can you, any better?
Ralph, there's something wrong with your speaker. All right.
Can we have apartments limited to 1 and 2 bedroom?
Brian, can you message Ralph and just let him know that maybe he needs just to log out and log in?
Sure thing.
All right.
No, it's my computer.
He's gone.
Bye, Ralph. Nice knowing you. But all right, while we wait for Ralph to come back, and again, we're not going to do any deliberating. I hear you. Come back, Ralph.
We don't hear him yet.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sort of.
Is it any?
Nope.
Not.
Now, it sounds like you're saying one word every 3 or 4 seconds.
You have a nice smile on your face.
I was about to say that. You have a great smile, Ralph. Just got better.
Yeah, there's a connection issue. Ralph, you might try turning your video off.
Can't wait for our old meetings again, huh?
I was saying the same thing.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
The meeting I'm at is being held in a convention center that seats 8,000. And the Board of County Commissioners, I think there are 9 of them, are spaced out in an area about the size of a basketball court. And sitting at individual tables all the way around. So
Wow.
Is this any better, guys?
everybody's using a different way.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Much cleaner, Ralph. Yes.
I just had to move closer to my router. So I have no clue what I was saying.
Neither do we.
Are we going to limit apartments to 1 and 2 bedrooms and leave the rest just the way it is?
You know, apartments, residential apartments will be 1 to 2 bedrooms, and then townhouses and condominiums will be a maximum, up to a maximum 3 bedroom.
I like the idea of limiting like the apartments to 1 and 2 bedrooms, but I would leave the townhomes and condos open-ended.
The 4 and 5 up to 4 and 5 bedrooms.
Not that they would necessarily put it in, but I think it gives them some flexibility.
I don't know.
Yeah, I say keep it at 3. You start getting to the point where you have creative uses of a house with pooled families and things of that nature, which again is not bad to discuss for another day. I believe in in-law apartments and so forth, but at this point, I think just keeping it up to 3, and then any changes we can use for a future revision. So what we're going to do is we'll work on some language for section 5.3b12 new subsection G, which will have promoting a blend of apartment sizes from 1 to 2 bedroom, townhouse and condo at 3 bedrooms. How's that?
Who's going to work on this language?
Me.
Okay.
I'll work on it and I'll send it over just and don't reply all, just reply individually for comments, and then we'll discuss it publicly at our next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That works.
The next point on our agenda is, put the glasses on here. All right. I was talking again with Attorney Pill about a term he referred to as contract zoning. Now, the cases that he cited not, I mean, they're on point, but not necessarily on point. It was basically a developer who said, hey, listen, if you town approve this, I'll make a donation to the town of $8 million and use it for whatever. Okay. Now that's a part. Now the court ended up supporting the town's decision for the zone change because notwithstanding the vote, I mean, the money, it was within the town's purview through town meeting as legislative board, like town council, to do that. Okay, and I sent you all a copy of that court case. However, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here, but the point that he was trying to make was this, is before making the zone change, not approving the bylaw, but before making the zone change, have the host community agreement in place before the vote. Because once it's rezoned and you can't put together a good host community agreement, you're really in an odd spot because you just rezoned it. So say, listen, we will rezone if we can put together a host community agreement. Now we have Joe Conley who wants to speak. He's also another part of the development team. So I will allow Joe to speak. Joe, are you ready? All right, well, while they're sorting that out, any thoughts on that? In other words, the contract would be, we do this and we will do this, which he felt is within the purview consistent with this court case. Here comes Joe. Joe, your mic is off.
Let's see what we do here.
That's fine.
Oops, sorry about that. You can move on.
Go, here you are.
There
We
you
got
are.
you.
Okay.
Hi, Joe.
Sorry about it. Hi, how's everybody?
Good. Good.
Don, I was going to chime in about the affordable part, but I think we passed it already. So you're going to go back to Attorney Phil on it. The only thing I was going to add is that you want to pick your number. And it sounded like having a cap at 20% meant that you guys are not too sure where you want to be on it.
No, that no, the 20% cap was something suggested for the sake of discussion
Right.
by our special town
Attorney Phil.
counsel, SEL,
Right.
and that was why I brought it up for discussion. It seemed that the consensus of the subcommittee is to go back to the town council and discuss 10% as a cap as well as being the requirement. And
Right.
again, this was just to have a discussion point.
Correct. But I was just going to chime in with my experience.
If you could
with
speak
that.
up just a little bit, Joe, please.
Sorry about that. I was going to just chime in with my experience about having it with a number that's not firm and making sure that you pick your number and you go with it. If it's 10%, don't try to go with it.
Joe, if you could speak up, please.
Sorry about that.
It's struggle.
Raise the volume all the way. Any better?
You guys hearing him better?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay, I'll just reach in.
So anyway, what I was saying is that my experience with affordable housing is that you need to pick your number and say, this is what you want. If it's 10%, the number would be, because you don't want to leave it up to interpretation later on. If somebody come back and say, well, they put in 20%, so maybe they meant 20% and not 10%. That's all I was going to add before. So it sounds like you're on the right track, just going back to Attorney Phil and say you want to pick your number at 10%.
All right, so I don't want to paraphrase you because again, I don't know whether it's just the ambient noise behind me because I can see Marilyn and I both leaning in trying to hear you. So you're saying what we're saying about having it 10% and maxing it at 10% makes
Right.
more sense.
Right, and just saying that the language should say it's a requirement of the applicant, whoever's going to build, because there's going to be more than one site, that the applicant's required to build or make affordable housing of 10% by the schedule that's going to be attached.
Not to exceed.
not to exceed.
But that's what our language says.
Yes,
Yeah. We just have to put down the not to exceed.
right. Thank you.
And you had any other points we discussed that you wanted to chime in on?
No, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
All right. So anyway, what we were talking about is allowing the license, almost like MGM, have the host community agreement in place before MGM went into existence. And to have that kind of codified here, that before the town will make a zone change to a piece, that we have the host community agreement in place. And that's what he was referring to as contract zoning. Yes, Meryl, I see your hand.
Yeah, you were finished, right? Okay. The community host agreement is a valuable piece. We all agree. That's why we want to put it in. The frustrating part, or at least the piece I need to understand, has to do with, we're requesting an impact statement at some point. Issues from that would be worked into the a host community agreement. My concern is, and I understand why it would be wonderful to have this locked in place before we went for the zone change. How much are we requiring our developers to do in the way of lead work in order to provide the correct information for this host community agreement prior to the zone change? I've always been accused of not being business friendly, and I'm really sensitive to the fact that this is, are we asking too much of a business owner to provide all this information ahead of time? How much work do they have to do to get to that point in order to come to a, to provide that information before the zone change even goes into effect? I hope I'm making myself clear. I just don't want to discourage a project because too much is necessary prior to even them knowing if they're going to be able to go forward with it.
Well, the case he was citing is Duran versus IDC Bellingham, LLC. And what's suggested is, let's say the town would commit to the zone change without officially voting for the zone change, subject to an agreed host community agreement. That's what I was saying. In other words, they're not at risk of saying the town is not going to give the zone change if we could come up with a host community agreement.
Right.
The town will say it's almost like buying a house saying subject to mortgage approval or subject to inspections or something of that nature. So what it appeared was, we'll give you $8 million if you give this to us. Well, they said yes, but it still had to go to town meeting, and the town meeting approved it anyway. And the way the court looked at it was, yeah, that was fine. That was within the legislative body's purview to do that. And they weren't necessarily bought out because that was independent of that. They still approved it. So ours is strictly on point with the project. We're not saying, hey, give us money to build a new high school, unless that would create the need for high school. I mean, that's part of the host community agreement, but give us money for something else and we'll give you this. This all ties into this project. Say, we will, as a council, agree to the zone change, but before that vote becomes in effect, so we don't have to backtrack and unzone change, change it back, we want that host community agreement in place. Yes, Marilyn.
Our document currently reads, the proposed development shall be the subject to the provisions of a host community agreement negotiated by the East Meadow Town Manager and approved by the Town Council. This agreement shall address impact issues such as but not limited to traffic mitigation, affordable housing, school enrollment, public safety, peer review as some examples. Now, how can we create a host community agreement prior to looking at plans, knowing what's being proposed?
It's just the effective date of the zone change approval will be when that's approved. In other words, they're not going to be at a risk where we don't we're going to renege on it. It'll be a conditional approval,
Right.
a contract by contract. And the contract says, we as a council are voting to do the zone change, but the zone change isn't going to be in effect until we have an approved host community agreement. So we have the zone change approved, but if we can't reach a host community agreement, we don't have to now go back and zone it back to industrial or anything of that nature.
But I guess where I'm struggling with is I'm trying to be, or I would like the town to be receptive to what the cost would be regarding all the prep work that would have to be done prior to this agreement, which may not move forward to a zone change, and it's all for naught. I mean, I may not be making myself clear, or I may not be understanding exactly what you're proposing.
What it would be an approval with a condition to make the approval in effect. Just like we give a liquor license and we say, okay, are they tip certified? Are they this and that and the other thing? We'd say, you have the zone change, but that zone change is not going to be effective until we have a mutually agreed upon signed host community agreement. If we can't come to terms on that, then that zone change is not in effect. It's been approved, but not in effect. That was the conversation I was having with Michael.
So you're saying that Attorney Pill indicated that the town could do a conditional zone change subject to?
Well, he called it contract zoning, and contract zoning basically means that you reach into a contract with the developer, and that contract you then move to a zone change. That's how I understood it. That was the tail end of our conversation. I'd be happy to revisit it, but he did send me that that Durant Billingham case, and it seems to speak of it not directly on point for what we're talking about, but instead of money to the town, having the host community agreement in place, and then the zone change becomes effective. Because from a negotiating point of view, if you've already created the zone and the petitioner says, what are you going to do with it if we walk away? You won't have the proper arm's length bargaining with both sides to try to get the best, because you've already zoned it. But they're not going to be at risk of not having the zone unless we can't come to terms with the host community agreement. If we can't come to terms with the host community agreement, then it's a moot point anyway. Don't you agree?
Well, except that we have worked very hard on this document to put protections in place with respect to the needs of our community. Plus, it's under special permit. I mean, there were a variety of areas where I believe as team players, we could all work together for a project that's successful for the town without, holding that zone change hostage. I guess that's the piece that I'm having trouble with.
Well,
because you're asking them to invest their time, their talent, their dollars, and at some point in time, they may not have anything if we agree that the zone change doesn't move forward.
No, the zone change would be a conditional approval. They would have a zone change contingent on it, but the zone change wouldn't be in effect until we have the host community agreement in place, which actually makes sense if you think of it that way. Because if they're going to have the zone change, and if the host community agreement can't be worked out, guess what? That piece of land they own is already zone changed. You see? So as I said, that was the thing Attorney Pill and I were kind of discussing on the tail end of our conversation. And I never really looked at it that way, but it kind of makes good flow sense to say, you will have this, you will have the assurances, you will have a vote. The town council is going to say, yes, we approve rezoning this piece of land, but it will not take effect per contract zoning, until we have reached a host community agreement. Because otherwise we've just rezoned that piece, we don't have a host community agreement, and the developer can go sell it to somebody else with incredible value because it's just been rezoned as a mixed use project. Use. Yes, Ralph.
So I'm just going through the steps. Typically, someone would come in for a zone change,
Right,
have their zone change to mixed use development. Then they would go to the planning board with their site plan.
right.
They would go through the whole special permit process and all. It would be my understanding that after that would come the host community agreement based on what their development is.
Correct.
And it sounds like what this contract zoning would be is the host community agreement would have to be developed before they even went for a site plan, which doesn't make much sense. And the cost to actually have them go through a site plan review and all to get all the way to the very end and then not be able to do a host community agreement, it seems expensive.
Okay, let's say we didn't do that. Let's say they go and get the zone change. Let's say they go through site plan approval and everything. And let's say we don't get the host community agreement. We're still in the same spot. But worse, we've already rezoned the land, and if they walk away, they can sell it to somebody else and they can put a different project in.
But I think through to Ralph and Marilyn's point, though, if we developed a host community agreement before we even knew the details of all the project that we're actually going to have move forward, if someone did come in through with a different project later because they sold it, the impacts could be totally different and that agreement was useless.
Well, what we're saying is they would have an approval of the zone change, but that wouldn't be made a matter of record until we had the host community agreement in place. So they're not going to be at risk that the planning, they can do despite, the zone change itself will be a function of having the host community agreement in place. That's what this is all about here, is discussion, thoughts on it.
Initially, if I may, our discussion was we have to the zone in order for the land to be rezoned to that use. We're in the process of creating the zone through the details of this document. This document is very detailed in comparison to the original document when we started. I believe that this is like any other zone change. We've had zone changes, not that many, but some before the zone change takes place, and then the developer goes through the process. And if it doesn't work, and if the developer resells the land to someone else at a higher value, that's their business because it's their property. But the new developer has to follow the same set of standards that we've applied here in this document. So I'm struggling with how to get the comfort of this host community agreement ahead of time without putting the developer through hoops, spending money, and we need to be reasonable. I'm not sure that it's reasonable to put those issues ahead of site plan review, ahead of coming to the planning board, ahead of going through special permit.
No, I think the process can still take place, but it would be a conditional approval subject to the host community agreement. In fact, the whole the bylaw, if approved as it stands, still requires a host community agreement.
Correct.
Just at this point, if we do unfortunately have to walk away with a developer, we still have that piece of land zoned in its original use. So if we couldn't come together with a host community agreement, then we still have that zone for its prior use of industrial. We wouldn't have that otherwise. It would still be rezoned, and we don't have a host community agreement. That's what the point was. The point is, they would get, like in this case, the assurances from the powers that be, you will have your zone change. It'll happen. However, we got to have the host community agreement. Whereas in that case, there was money that they wanted to give to the town and consideration and all that. That's not that. This is a host community agreement. We have the host community agreement, negotiate in good faith with each other, arm's length, put together a fair agreement. And that point, then there'll be permission to and make that piece zoned what it is. Because if we rezone any piece and we don't have a host community agreement, all this work, all this site plan work, all this stuff is for naught anyway, because are we allowing construction of a project without a host community agreement? That's not how I'm figuring this out, unless I'm missing something. So it's all good. It's all just to keep it more of an arm's length transaction.
But isn't it already, aren't we already protected though as a town? Because even if the zone change did go through, if the whole project is still requiring a special permit, that permit wouldn't be valid if you didn't meet the provision of having a host community agreement, at which point no project can be developed there until that's settled.
Well, this just puts us in a position where that zone change wouldn't be in effect until we reach an agreement with the developers, which is what we would be doing anyway. I guess, like I said, this came up in conversation with Attorney Pill. I thought it was a good call. It was a good point. And I said I would mention it, and I do, that's why it's on the agenda right now. It's just basically to find a way to accomplish what all the parties want. They want to have a fair agreement. They don't want to have the reputation of any project being adverse to the town of East Long Meadow or any community that they're in. And this is that we can reach a host community agreement before ground is broken and before the zone change is in effect. So again, just for discussion, I'm just trying to get on it. I'm not asking for a vote on it right now. I'll go back to Attorney Pill with some of these comments and see if I'm misreading what he was saying, but I don't think so, but I first to admit I could. And then I'll report back to you on this one. The concern is making sure that parties both have the best place to be able to put together a fair agreement for all parties, for both concerned. And it's not in that much of a place if the zone has already been changed and now we're trying to get together a good deal and we've already rezoned the property. Then what?
Don, if I may chime in a little bit. One, I agree with Marilyn and Ralph. I thought that was the procedure, was it'd be zoned. We'd go through hearing, special permit, and then knowing the impacts in the special permit, we'd be able to draft a host community agreement that addressed those impacts. In the development world, we don't have anything until we have all approvals. So I don't think you lose any leverage now versus later in putting something together, other than the fact that you'd be negotiating an agreement. We would both be negotiating an agreement with bad information or no information, because we wouldn't have the impacts. We wouldn't have exactly what we're talking about. And I think that would be a disservice to both of us. So I think that the way that Ralph and Marilyn laid it out, it was my expectation. I think it makes better sense because we'll have better information at that point. And again, and admittedly speaking on behalf of this petitioner, it's petitioner that's owned land in your town for more than 20 years. We're at as big a disadvantage as anybody at this point, because we're kind of sitting there. We can't pick our business up and go someplace else. It's not like being a contract purchaser where if it didn't work out, you say okay and you wash your hands and you walk away. We can't do that. We own 330 Chestnut. So again, I think the way that Ralph and Marilyn laid it out is my expectation, and one I think we'd all be better served with in having better information to negotiate the agreement than what we have today.
But I'll relay all that to Attorney Pill and through our town manager to see if I can even invite him at our next meeting to speak to us as well, to make sure nothing's lost in interpretation, if that's all right.
Understood. And again, if that were our expectation, that we would have had to negotiate a host community agreement before zoning, we would have started it a year ago. We would have started it with our first Planning Matters Subcommittee meeting back in May. So, you know, we would have behaved differently. So again, I think our expectation is that it would be part of site plan, and we would start negotiating it almost, you know, as soon as we started the site plan process, so that we had good information.
All right. I'll table this until our next meeting, so I make sure I'm clear on it, and maybe and see if there are any pitfalls that I'm missing, or and again,
Okay.
if it's going to be more of a burden than benefit, then I'll reel it back. All right, it's 4:11 right now. I know some of you have another meeting coming up, and now we days of general discussion. Any other bullet points or anything that you guys want to talk about on this?
In terms of the logistics of the document, we're not going to make any changes based on our discussion today until information.
We already did the one vote on striking out a couple words regarding the.
Right. And
Yeah.
Ralph, are you going to do the document, or do you want me to do the document?
No, I'll take care of the document.
And I'll
Okay.
work on that section G language for review and for
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
Next meeting, when do we schedule?
You want to piggyback another one of these right before our next council meeting? Unless, when are you guys scheduling your charter review meetings?
Don't know.
All
That
right.
meets at 5 o'clock tonight.
Well, I mean, if we can do 3 to 4:30 again, do this time again in the before our next meeting. That way people have a break between meetings.
Ralph, you're really the
Look at
one.
Ralph, because I know your line of work.
I will make it work. Later in the afternoon's better for me, so anytime 3 o'clock or later, I'll make it work.
Okay. All right. So what I'll do is, and John and Joe, is this time work for you?
We can make it work, yes.
Yeah, I'll make it work, and I would ask if we could move
Sooner.
quicker than
I-
slower.
I'm hoping to have this the next meeting before our next council meeting, which is in 2 weeks, right? We're going on summer schedule, but I want to make sure we get it. Hang on for a second on here. I'm working off a different calendar system. July 7th. That sound good?
Wait a minute.
Sounds like years away.
Well, it's all right. Well, here, hang on, gang. Yeah, now you don't want a real estate lawyer to do a closing to do one of these on Tuesday the 30th. I wouldn't be able to make that one. That's the end of the month for me.
What about the end of that week, like Thursday or something?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at, and we need 48 hours notice. We need Ryan to set up and so forth. 29th and 30th don't work. Next week's a truncated week anyway, because of the 4th of July holiday is mostly being observed on the 3rd anyway. So, I mean, I can bookmark the 7th, and if something comes up sooner and we have enough time, we can do that. Or I just won't schedule it right now, and I'll do like I did last time, send it out to everybody, and then we'll publish and see how that plays out.
I would rather schedule.
All right, just schedule it for the 7th at 3 o'clock Zoom meeting, and take it from there. Marilyn's checking on something.
Yeah, no, I went to grab my calendar. I'm sorry. I had my phone off so it wouldn't disturb me, so
Sure.
I couldn't get at it. 7th is good.
7th is good, 3 o'clock, right here. Hopefully, we don't have too many of these for many reasons. Unless there's anything else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made, motion seconded. I'll call for, again, a roll call vote. Marilyn?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And if you have any questions, obviously let us know. And thank you, Joe, and thank you, John, and a special thank you to Ryan for putting this together.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Be well.
See you guys.
You too.